Chapter 2. Fourth Cycle, 54 Units. Covenant Battle Calendar. Metrome System. Human Designation. Heliopause. Aboard CCS-class battle cruiser. Undiminished Intellici. Fleetmaster Thel Vadami paced the bridge of his flagship, the Undiminished Enteleci, with roiling frustration. It had been several cycles since the destruction. Of the Covenant ship Foundry, Steady Opulence, known to the humans simply as K-749, and his intrusion corvettes had yet to find their next target of opportunity. Thel had secretly cursed himself at the hubris of leaving such a light complement of troops stationed on the asteroid. For this had cost him dearly. Not only had his fleet not been in system to support the brazen raid on the Steady Opulence, but also had been stuck spending the last half-solar cycle, roughly 16 months according to the human lexicon, either supervising the training and armament of his growing fleet, paying lip service to the ever-frustrating Sanshayum council members requesting progress reports, or quelling petty squabbles between the many races his ship's complement housed. It had been known to the junior fleetmaster through his previous campaigns that the humans had made it a point to harass their supply lines and undefended targets in a vain attempt to slow their progress over the years. In what he could only imagine was sheer dumb luck, the humans had stumbled upon one of many of the Covenant's lesser mining operations, taking ore and precious metals from the asteroid, to be used to refine and shape and to be shipped away for final assembly at one of a dozen shipyards scattered throughout the system. This had been but the first step in his career as fleetmaster of the Fleet of Particular Justice, and had caused a ripple effect of dissenting opinions of his new status. Many of the Sanshayum, the highest-ranking species of the pact that comprised the Covenant Empire, had used this catastrophe to nearly strip him of his fleet before they could even begin operations. There was a steady group of minor ministers and political opportunists who pushed the agenda that he wasn't ready for this honor, but the High Prophet of Truth himself had bestowed this honor upon him several solar cycles ago. Climbing from the ranks of the Sangheli Zealot class and propelling to lead his own modest fleet was most unheard of. Now his achievements were overshadowed by a group of suicidal and dishonorable humans who threatened to dismantle all that he had worked so hard to achieve. A singular company of humans in special armor had managed to infiltrate their defenses, land on the asteroid, and destroy enough of the plasma reactors to permanently cool the asteroid and to permanently halt production of raw materials in that sector. "Scan it again," Fleetmaster Vadami demanded, continuing to pace his command deck in a cool rage. He had recently enacted a new approach to locate his fleet's next target. After the incident at 23 Libre in 2535, and the untimely arrival of his fleet to support his singular battalion of troops on the asteroid too little too late, he had dedicated his time to a more systematic approach to rooting out the heretical vermin. This new strategy led him to the farthest end of what the humans called the Orion arm of the galaxy, to either locate their home world, or, at this point, any human colony discovered by the Prophet's luminaries. Holy relics left, behind by their gods that detected artifacts that their religion coveted above all else. "Fleetmaster," exclaimed one of his readers, "the purity of spirit has detected something on their long-range scanners." Many cycles earlier, Thel had split his armada in two equal halves in order to maximize his search pattern, hopeful to speed up the arduous task of locating and eradicating the blasphemers. One half, led by himself and 6 other craft, were to take the southern sector of this nebula. He tasked the other half of the fleet with the northern sector, led by none other than his fleet's sister ship and apparent victor of the hunt, the Ket-pattern battlecruiser Purity of Spirit. "Excellent. Raise Shipmaster Udemy and place him on my display," Thel stated. "As you command, Fleetmaster," the signal officer responded in kind. "Hailing them now." No longer than 3 breaths had passed that the sister ship's commander presented himself on the deck's main display output. A proud and formidable Sangheli stood from his domineering throne in his own command deck. Glistening, ornate, ship-borne armor gleamed in the dim hue of the familiar purple tones the Sangheli had come to associate with. Siswe Udumi stood well over 2.5 meters in height with narrow eyes dominating his scarred face. He donned a light shipboard harness, cerulean blue that shone with several ornate inscriptions on each breastplate and shoulder piece. In nearly a half-century of service to the Covenant, he had felt scorned when the Prophet of Truth had granted him leadership of the newly formed fleet and not a seasoned veteran. Since the decision was made over 2 cycles ago, he had done everything to undermine his authority just shy of direct mutiny. In his deluded mind, he did not view the Kaidan of Keep Vadam worthy enough to rule what was rightfully his. As of late, he had tirelessly reminded Thel that they were overdue to locate and cleanse another human world. A vain ploy to establish that he was not ready to maintain the affairs of a fleet so grand. "It seems the honor is mine, Fleetmaster." The figure abruptly boomed, not offering the typical greeting to his Fleetmaster, nor showing at least a polite rattle of his mandibles. "It seems you gambled on the wrong sector of this nebula. Perhaps I should initiate the cleansing without you." He chuckled in obvious defiance of Thel's command to wait for his report back to the prophets. Without a representative to witness the world and review the scans his fleet would conduct, the onus was upon himself to conduct a thorough reconnaissance of the planet and send a superluminal report back to High Charity, the Covenant Holy City, and the capital. "You would be mindful to stay your tongue, Shipmaster," Thel retorted, keeling his demeanor in front of his subordinates. Especially due to his relatively younger age compared to Udumi, Thel was determined to radiate dominance and a cool hand to not lose their confidence in his abilities as a commander. He shot a steely gaze at one of his readers who dared a glance in his direction. With a faint rattle, the minor officer snapped his gaze back to his station. "Send a reconnaissance picket to survey the planet, and while I await your report, return your compliment to my location in this asteroid cluster. We have much to discuss." "Ha!" Shipmaster Udumi boomed and mandibles rattled in mockery. "What's wrong, Fleetmaster? Are you so nervous to engage our foe that you'd miss this opportunity to lead our forces in yourself? Our scanners show there isn't even a navy orbiting the planet. The spoils are ripe for the Prophet's taking. We will cleanse this world with or without you, and I, Siswai Udumi, will be in the Prophet's favor." The formidable Sanghili rose to his full height, extending his contracted legs. The tunic draped over his sinewy arms and shoulders, rippling as he stood. An angry scar bent as his four-jawed mandibles flexed. Clacking his mandibles in a gesture of challenge, Siswai declared, "Your time as Fleetmaster will soon come to an end, and the gods will not remember you while I tread the path toward the great journey." With his broadcast still transmitting, he turned to his bridge crew. "Come, my brothers. It is time we make our keeps proud and let the gods shine upon our holy mission." As quickly as Shipmaster Udumi had dismissed Thel's orders, he snapped off the communication to his leader's flagship. Thel stood from his chair broiling with rage, disregarding his earlier attempts to hide his frustration and contempt for his insubordinate shipmaster. He had known for some time that this day would come. The day when one of his warriors would find the courage to challenge his authority and vie to take his place as Fleetmaster of particular justice for. This was the way of the martial Sanghili. Their culture was rich with the blood of each keep's struggle. Every modicum of respect fought for and earned through martial combat. There was only one thing left to do about this problem, he knew. Unfortunately, his retribution for such a gross display of insubordination would have to wait. Above all else, the prophets will be done. The cleansing of this newly discovered human outpost took precedence. The San Shayum Council back on the Covenant's holy city of High Charity would not stand to entertain any report of infighting. Results were what the San Shayum sought, and results were what they would get. "Bring our fleet to quarters," the Fleetmaster barked. Snapping out of his haze of rage and contemplation, he allowed himself to be engulfed in. "I will deal with Shipmaster Udumi in due time. For now, prepare for transition to the Purity's location and ready the troops." With the issuance of his final orders, Thel disembarked the looming bridge of his cruiser and headed to his meditation chamber. From this point on, his maturity must never be in question. He will contemplate on this exchange and bide his time. There would be a time, he knew, where soon the opportunity to strike down the malcontents plaguing his ranks. For now, all he could do is meditate on these recent events and prepare. Siswai snapped off the main bridge display. His impatience had grown to such a state where his honor could no longer suffer the failings of his weak commander. He had fought the humans on a dozen campaigns, spanning 3 tours, and had personally led his elite commandos during half as many battles. There was a time for caution and a time for planning. This was not that time. The enemy's defenses were down, he knew, and like a young helioscrill, it was time to pounce. "Heed not Fleet Master Vadami's precaution, brothers." Siswai began to confidently pace his bridge. The time to strike is now. This engagement will be over before the rest of the fleet can even arrive from the other edge of this system. Bring our attack craft forward and eliminate their satellites so they may not call for help. He sauntered over to his intelligence officer's station. "Show me the planet once again, Havam," he ordered. "Let me witness this godless planet once more before we cleanse this filth." "As you command, Shipmaster." Kato Havam promptly raised his station's main display, a series of heavenly bodies projected upon it. In its center, an arid planet of sufficient mass to support sentient life appeared. It had multiple massive sandstorms brewing across the northern hemisphere that was visible from orbit. Below the equator sat a lush strip of arable land. Neat rows that ran for kilometer after kilometer spanned the singular massive supercontinent. The reader noted that the planet had an eccentric axial tilt, coming in at nearly 45 degrees relative to the yellow dwarf star in the center of the system. This told the rest of the planet's story. Elevated levels of carbon dioxide and nitrogen, coupled with the tilt of the planet and the massive scars of barren Earth near the equator, showed that the Nishumi could barely control their own seed world. As Siswai was standing over the intelligence officer's workstation, his study of the planet's topography and vast oceans and mountain ranges was interrupted. "Shipmaster," another one of his bridge officers chimed in. "What of our support craft? Our bladder ship would be grateful to refill its depleted stores of fuel and carrier gas. My scanners show that there is a suitable planetoid in this system to replenish." "Excellent," Siswai remarked. "Disseminate these orders immediately." He strode back to his command chair, taking his time to bask in the glory of his soon-to-be spoils. He sauntered up the great ramp that led to his seat, that lay domineering above the rest of the workstations. He settled back into his command seat and reviewed a small holographic tablet before him. The veteran shipmaster began to review his fleet status, vector, and disposition relative to Ort, cloud they were passing through. "We are to move all 7 vessels at once. Navigation, set course for this human settlement. Instruct our vessels to slave their navigational data to the purity, and establish our formation to maximize coverage of their equatorial region." "Right away, Shipmaster." The navigation officer clacked his 4 reptilian-like jaw segments in excited anticipation. "Havam, you will send our intrusion corvette to escort the bladder ship and begin refueling efforts on the planetoid outsystem." The intelligence officer in quiet focus responded again with the affirmative, and began keying orders and all relevant data to the system his scanners had discovered so far. Last but not least, to prepare his ground troops. The Purity's berthing housed a modest complement of 4 battalions of Ungoi, 1 battalion of Kigyar, a light company of his best Sangheli warriors, and a handful of Megalek Golo hunter pairs. It was fine time that they contributed to this frustratingly dull patrol through this sector. The fleet of Particular Justice had just initiated their second tour, and the fresh troops were, to put it lightly, restless. Siswai was eager to convey his orders via his chair's console, issuing ship-wide orders to his division. "Rejoice, my faithful!" Siswai picked up his communication device and began to transmit. "For the gods have graced us with a bounty this day. Our readers have discovered another heretical outpost in this system, and to celebrate, we will take 1 step further toward the great journey and erase these heathens from the face of the galaxy." As he declared his holy proclamation, His bridge officers sounded off a triumphant roar akin to a pack of predators howl in anticipation of the hunt. "Warriors, prepare yourself. We will initiate the planetary bombardment after we raise this pathetic world of its resources." Shipmaster Udumi killed the shipwide broadcast and switched his communication device to a private channel. He would raise his garrison's field marshal and begin his assessment of the terrain. Due to his crew's impatience, it would be prudent to pick the most efficient locations to begin, wanting to be quick and efficient. If he could land his troops and begin the invasion before the Whelp Fleetmaster arrived, surely the high profits would be in his favor. He would secure a glorious victory and prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that he, Siswai Udumi, Kaidan of Keep Udum, was worthy to tread the path of the gods. He would strike down the zealot Vadami and return honor to his keep on Sanghelios. He cleared his head of further hubris. It was premature to celebrate his victory and an undisciplined habit of a hatchling. Now was the time for focus and swift justice. After disseminating the remainder of his private orders to his field marshal, Marava Mulkamai, he turned once again to his navigation officer. "Set course for the planet. I want to cover its equator immediately and let loose our landing craft," Siswai ordered. "We will jump immediately. Break off our corvette and bladder ship for their supply run. The time is now, brothers. Let us begin." No sooner had Siswai declared his final orders than a dazzling, luminescent cobalt blue orb began to materialize in front of the ship's prow. As the distortion of space-time began to swell in size, proportionate to the Armada's size in real space, each vessel began to slip between dimensions on a relatively short jump from one end of the sector to their target destination. By Siswai's personal calculations, it would take them only 30 units or approximately 1 human hour. During this brief respite from the productive first shift of the bridge crew's rotation, Shipmaster Siswai returned to his personal quarters. While his half-fleet was awaiting arrival to the human colony, the commander took the opportunity to focus his mind and prepare his combat harness. The wrap ping, adorned with intricate gold and deep purple calligraphy, was a testament to his experience and combat prowess. Each thread told a tale of his conquests over the years. With great care, he unlocked the clasps on his broad shoulders, allowing the fabric to gently slide off his skin and hit the deck of his quarters. He picked up the folded tunic with care, reliving the tales that each thread told, and gently returned the garment to its place in his storage container. Siswai then turned to face his command console and hailed his quartermaster. The Sangheli quartermaster's voice filled the room. "Yes, shipmaster? How may I be of service?" the elite warrior inquired. "Yes, brother. Bring a bandolier of grenades and my personal rifle to my quarters at once. I have decided I will direct the first wave myself." His eyes shifted from the task at hand of unlocking his personal coffer to confirm his personal energy blade was at his side. He picked up the Type 1 energy sword and inspected it. Rotating it slowly in the crook of his palm, he grasped the tang of the hilt in satisfaction. Deep etches lined the hilt of the deactivated blade, reminiscent of past battles won. With a satisfied rattle of his mandibles, he set the blade upon his hip once again with a smart snick. As he talked, the commander opened the locker containing his combat harness. An assemblage of armor plating hung before him. Observing each scratch, dent, and carbon-scored mark upon the hardened pieces of the nanolaminate composite, Siswai brushed it aside and grabbed the suit's vacuum-sealed underlayer. He began to pull it from its storage unit as the quartermaster began again. "At once, shipmaster, it shall be done." The Sangheli snapped off his communications device, undoubtedly eager to please his ship's leader. In due time, Siswai's armaments arrived to his cabin while he had settled into his combat harness. He returned to the command deck with only a breath of a cycle left before they exited slipspace. Just in time, he thought to himself. He wanted to see firsthand what this planet had to offer his hungry troops. With this notion fleeting his mind, alarm klaxons began to blare in his ears. "Incoming projectile, unknown source, prepare for imminent," Purity of Spirit's navigation officer declared. As he instinctively flexed his sinewy body in a combat stance, A massive explosion bellowed below his hooves. Siswai was unceremoniously tossed to the port side of the cabin, slamming his head and torso directly into the bulkhead. He blinked away the pain searing in his midsection to reveal the pulsing hue of the ship's emergency lights. He blinked once more, then nothingness.